Hello everybody, my name is Jackie and welcome to Prairie Sports Talk, the podcast where we talk about sports that directly impact the Canadian prairie. And we've got a few really fun topics to talk about today. So we are going to open up talking about the WCBL and the Saskatoon Berries coming to Swift Current to play the 57s for the first time in franchise history. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the fact that Stanley Cup somehow is still going on and Edmonton is still kicking. And then we are going to close up by talking about last week in the CFL and my predictions for this upcoming week. But before we properly get into it, I just want to say a massive congratulations to the Boston Celtics on winning their 18th championship this week. Congratulations to the whole team. I hope the fan base enjoys the championship. Already can't wait for next NBA season, but without further ado, let's get into the episode. This past Friday, the Saskatoon Berries played the Swift Current 57s for the first time in franchise history. And not only that, for the first time ever, Joe Conninhan was on a team playing against Swift Current. Joe Conninhan was with the Swift Current Baseball Club for 20 years and won 3 championships as a player and 3 championships as a coach. Not to mention he was MVP twice as a player and Coach of the Year 3 times. A tremendous career with Swift Current. And then in 2020, because he couldn't take the emotional stress of having to tell all the players that the baseball season that year was cancelled, he ended up stepping down as coach of the 57s. But when the Berries came into being, they offered him the head coaching job and he couldn't turn it down. So now he is the head coach for the Saskatoon Berries, who came to Swift Current on Friday. And it was a very, very good game. It was back and forth, and for the first little bit, highly defensive game. But around the 6th inning, the offenses finally started to turn on and both teams' bats started to light up, including a home run for hometown boy Brody Alexandre. But unfortunately, the Saskatoon Berries would take the lead in the top of the 9th and would end up winning the game 3-2. And there was a call on the last at-bat of the game that a lot of people, myself included, did not agree with. Now, at very least from my angle, the last pitch of the game looked like it was a ball. And it was a 2-2 count with 2 outs. To me, it looked like it was out of the strike zone, so that should have been a walk. I mean, not a walk, sorry. That should have been a 3-2 count. But they ended up calling it a strike. And yeah, the Swift Current fans weren't exactly happy with this call. There wasn't a lot of sustained booing, but right when the call was made, there was significant amounts of booing. And I was saying there, like, you can't end the game on a call like that. But I spoke to one of my friends who actually is an umpire because I wanted to hear his take on it. I was talking with him a little bit and he pointed something out that I didn't even think of until he literally pointed it out to me yesterday. He said to me, well, was that a strike in the 2nd inning? That stopped me in my tracks because I didn't even really think about consistency in calls or anything like that. I just wanted the call to be just the right call every time based on only the letter of the law. Like, I wanted the strike zone to be plain and simple. But he pointed out to me that in a way it can be more important for the strike zone to be consistent than to be absolutely perfect. And that stopped me in my tracks. Like I said, I had never even thought about that in terms of the game. And since he said that to me, I've been going back and forth in my head over whether or not it was the right call to make. Now, I'm not an umpire. I'm not here to make that call. I just thought that was a very interesting take on something I hadn't thought about. But it was a very fun game to watch. I'll link the highlights if I can find them in the description down below. Very fun game. Already can't wait to go to the next 57th game. Sylvan Lake Gulls are in Swift Current tonight for the second part of a back-to-back series. Both games in Swift Current. And then this Friday they also have a game against, I believe, Moose Jaw. That is going to be a very fun game to attend. I am looking forward to it. On to the CFL. So last week, my predictions were really, really good. I went 3-1, and the first game of the week ended up being the only game I was incorrect on, because Ottawa beat Winnipeg. The Red Blacks beat the Bombers. The Bombers have started this season 0-2. Meanwhile, the Red Blacks are 1-0. I cannot express how shocked I am by this. I know that Winnipeg is likely taking a step back this year between losing a player like Jeff Coat and losing a player like Haldrick with an aging team as well. It's no secret to anyone who follows the league closely that Winnipeg is very likely going to take a major step back this season. But I didn't think it'd be this early, and I didn't think it'd be this big. Now, Winnipeg still has plenty of time to turn it around. But they lost to Ottawa. Ottawa, they were the worst team in the league last season. So this leads me to one of two conclusions. Either Winnipeg has taken a step back right away after I thought that maybe they'd get a hot start and start to drop off around Labor Day, or Ottawa is just a lot better than I thought they were. And I feel like week 3, 4, and 5 will be very telling of what type of team Winnipeg is. I think if Winnipeg can somehow get to 500 in these next few weeks, I think they might still be a solid team and a threat in the West. But if they get to the end of week 5 and they still have a losing record, are we sure this is the same team we've seen the last 3-4 seasons? I don't think so. I really don't. And then we get to Montreal and Edmonton. I picked Montreal, no surprise here. Cody Fajardo and the Montreal Alouettes put on a solid offensive display against Edmonton, won without any major issues. Same thing with BC beating Calgary, and also, I just want to acknowledge 50,000 tickets sold to the BC Lions game. Obviously, this was somewhat boosted by the 50 Cent concert, but that does not change the fact they sold out, almost sold out the second bowl. This is a great sign for the CFL, and hopefully this concert has served to introduce a lot more people to the BC Lions and to the CFL as a whole, and hopefully this will produce a lot more fans. This was a genius marketing stroke from the Lions, and I really hope it pays off. And then on to the controversial game of last week, or at least controversial in my opinion. The Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Hamilton Tiger Cats. A game where Hamilton led for the majority of the matchup, but Saskatchewan came back late in the game, and because of a dropped pass, the Roughriders got an interception, and Brett Lawther was able to put it through the uprights for a game-winning field goal, because it's Brett Lawther, one of the most consistent late-game kickers in the league. But that's not where the controversy comes. The controversy comes because of a fumble. There was a very clear fumble midway through the second half, and as the player making the tackle, he lost his helmet. When he hit the ground, his helmet was completely off. It was, 5 yards away maybe. The fumble fell directly to him. He wrapped it up, held on, play was whistled dead, and the ball originally, let me say that again, originally was given to the Saskatchewan Roughriders. But the command center stepped in and ruled it was illegal participation because he did not have his helmet on when he recovered the fumble. Now, by the letter of the law, this was the right call. but by the spirit of the law, not so much. Because what does the CFL want him to do here? Do they want him to scramble out of a massive pileup, potentially endangering himself further because he doesn't have his helmet on? Do they want him to ignore the ball and just be like, oh, I lost my helmet, I can't play football now, I'm out of the play. I don't care if I'm right in the middle of it, I'm out. Do they want him to swat the ball away from him? I don't know what they want him to do. Because this is a situation where, to me, the most logical thing for him to do was to wrap up the football. But that's technically against the rules because he didn't have his helmet on. I don't know what the CFL wants him to do here. And I hope eventually, maybe this offseason, the CFL can hopefully give some clarity on what players should do in this situation if they lose their helmet but the ball lands directly on top of them or in front of them or whatever. Because it literally would have been more dangerous for the player to try and get out of the massive pack than it would have been for him to wrap up the ball. But regardless, I picked the Riders to win this game. The Riders did. I move on to having 3 wrong so far and 5 correct. I'm 5-3 to start the season. Great start. On to my predictions for this upcoming week. Okay, on to my predictions for week 3. So, we opened the week with Ottawa and Montreal. I don't think it's that much of a stretch to say Montreal should dominate this game. Ottawa looked a lot better last week than I expected them to look. But Montreal is probably the hottest team in the league so far. I'd argue they've played the best out of all teams so far. Cody Fajardo has looked out of his mind. The lack of William Stanback hasn't impacted them nearly as much as I thought it would. Neither has the lack of Anthony Mack. I think the Alouettes have looked really, really well-rounded so far. I don't think there is a world in which Montreal loses this game. And I think the chances of them winning by less than 10 is a very unlikely occurrence that could happen, but I can't see it happening. And then we've got BC and we've got Winnipeg. I think BC will take this game. Winnipeg returns home after starting the season 0-2. I can't see that changing. BC should be 2-0 at this point in my opinion, but they're not. And I think the Lions are going to look to build off last week's momentum and they will likely beat the Bombers. I have this pinned as my potential game of the week because these are 2 teams with very skilled rosters. My question is, can Winnipeg play like we've seen them play in the past? Or, as I was saying before, has their fall off begun? And then we have Edmonton and Toronto. Cameron Dukes looked amazing in week 1. Toronto had the week off. And Edmonton, well, they've looked better than I expected them to. But the lack of an offensive line is still really hindering what McLeod Bethel-Thompson can do. Even though Bethel-Thompson will be against his team for the first time, his former team for the first time, and that's going to be a major motivator, I can't see Toronto losing this. Toronto has the chance to become the 3rd team to start 2-0 this season. I can't see them not capitalizing on that opportunity. And I think Dukes, there's not enough footage on him yet for the CFL defensive coordinators to look at him and put together a comprehensive plan to stop him. Give it 2-3 more weeks and maybe there will be. But at this point, not enough is known about him. And if he plays like he did in week 1, if he plays like that in week 3, I can't see Toronto losing to a team like Edmonton. And then we have a rematch from last week. Hamilton and Saskatchewan will be wrapping up a home-and-home series. Saskatchewan will be having their home opener finally in Mosaic Stadium. not as many tickets as I expected to be sold have been sold, but I don't think that's going to stop Rider Nation from showing up and just tearing the roof off Mosaic, despite the fact there technically isn't a roof. I think no matter how many Rider fans are there, they're going to be loud enough to throw Hamilton off their game, even though they will be hungry after losing such a tight game last week against Saskatchewan. I think Saskatchewan will win this. I don't think it will be as tight as it was last week. But my biggest question with the Rough Riders, can they win a game without getting a few breaks throughout the game? Can they put together a string of possessions where it's not just a couple lucky breaks that set up the possessions? Can they manufacture touchdowns instead of just having points kind of fall into their arms like the fumble fell into their defender's arm last week? I think they can, but they need to show it. But that is everything I have for you guys this week. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And if you're on Spotify, be sure to follow the 13th Man Podcast Network. I hope you guys have a great day. I hope you guys have a great week. I hope you guys have a great wherever. Stay safe, stay strong, you got this. And this is Jackie for Prairie Sports Talk signing off.